Now it was on. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys for being here today. Before I call this meeting to order, we have a special guest that's in the chambers that's a native Augustan that we're going to recognize. His name is Mr. Tony Mercedes. Mr. Mercedes, you've done a lot of things throughout the music industry, and it gives us great pride in having you here today. And on behalf of your work, we have a proclamation that we're going to read to you and also present you with something special. So if you don't mind, please come down front, please.
The City of Augusta, proclamation in recognition of Mr. Tony Mercedes Day. Whereas Tony Mercedes moved to Augusta, Georgia in 1976, where his father was stationed at Fort Gordon, soon to be Fort Eisenhower Military Base. He attended Glen Hills High School and graduated in 1980. He has remained a homeowner in the area after all these years. He has two children, Jasmine and Sean Johnson, who he adores. Mr. Mercedes married the love of his life, who he plans to spend the rest of his life with in 2006, Miss Tamara Hood. Whereas Mr. Mercedes worked at the Plant Vogel for 2 years in the labor union. He then transitioned to Savannah Riverside, where he worked his way up from cleaning bathrooms to being promoted as the first African-American quality control inspector overseeing 1,800 people. Mr. Mercedes owned Club Mercedes on Deansbridge Road for several years, and during this time he always maintained a love for music and was asked to help the group Deuce with their record Daisy Dukes. And whereas Mr. Mercedes launched his own independent record label here in Augusta, Georgia with just $2,300. Mr. Mercedes embarked on what others thought was an insane journey as an amateur to the music industry. That persistence and determination led Mr. Mercedes to the top of the music industry, Daisy Dukes, which went to the top of the Billboard charts, making it one of many of Mercedes' longest charting records in Billboard history, 56 consecutive weeks. And whereas Mr. Mercedes went on to publish multiple hits and became a two-time Grammy Award-winning music publisher, he clinched accolades from a barrage of #1 hits on the Billboard charts, which exceeded 100 million in the career record sales. He is the publisher for TLC's No Scrubs and Ed Sheeran's Shape of You. He also manages 5 of the top rising superstars in the music industry currently. And whereas Mr. Mercedes does not only have a love for music, but he also has a love for film and TV. The first major motion picture film production is Athena Saves Christmas, and is directed by Josh Weber and is starring Oscar winner Cuba Gooding Jr. And whereas Mr. Mercedes has made amazing strides in his personal and professional life, he continues to lead by example and have a heart for helping others achieve their goals in music, film, and TV. And let it be resolved that September 15, 2023 is Tony Mercedes Day, and the citizens and surrounds are encouraged to work within their communities to increase awareness and understanding of childhood speech. In witness thereof, I have unto set my hand and caused the seal of Augusta, Georgia, to be affixed this 5th day of September, 2023, given under my hand, Garnett L. Johnson, Mayor. It's on. Let's see. It's on. Is it on?
Commissioner said she wore the wrong outfit.
Miss Lee, can you speak? Are the podiums on? Well, I know we're trying to get him up. Audio, you're familiar with that, right? Audio, if it's not, it's still no?
Still on.
He's not even looking over. What's his number up there?
7116 or 7119.
What's the last number?
Miss May thought she was gonna.
He looking now.
Can we get the mic on, please?
Can you go to the mic over there?
Yeah, let me just go down.
This one's on. I don't know what's going on with this.
Mr. Mercedes, I think we finally got this fixed. Sir, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the city to present you with this proclamation naming today Tony Mercedes Day. In addition, we're going to present you a key to the city in which you're from. Thank you so much for your contributions not only to music, but leaving a legacy for the city, and we truly appreciate you. And if you don't mind, for just a couple minutes, we'd love to have you say something.
Okay.
You know, a long time ago when I was a 16-year-old kid, I remember looking out my bedroom window on Glen Hills Drive, thinking that one day, you know, maybe I could make something of myself. And this city embraced that dream. And this city actually really changed the, it molded and shaped the history of music. Because had I not done that one little record called Daisy Dukes, and Ed Sheeran would never sell 90 million records with a song called Shape of You. TLC would never do a song called No Scrubs. There would never be a song called Whoop, There It Is, and the list goes on and on. So Augusta, and I hope you guys stand with me because we did something pretty incredible for a country boy. So, and I appreciate it, and I still call this place home no matter where I've been, no matter where I go. Augusta's still my home, and I still have a house on Glen Hills Drive. So I appreciate it. After 30 years, I mean, I'm in awe just seeing so many familiar faces, and you know, I'm glad to have Tim Snell here. You know, he's one of the first guys to play my record, and you know, so I have to be able to share this day with the radio station, with Fats and Mr. Johnson. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much because, you know, I won a lot of awards, but this one here is special. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Continue to sell our story of Augusta everywhere you go. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate your time, allowing us to recognize one of Augusta's finest. Before I call this meeting to order, I saw Representative Brian Prince that's in the audience. He was tapping his watch not long ago, telling me to get on time. And Representative Prince, we're going to get on time. With that, Madam Clerk, I call this meeting to order.
Okay. Call your attention to the invocation portion of our agenda. We would like to ask Reverend Chris Leslie, pastor of the Walnut Grove Baptist Church, who will deliver our invocation today, after which we would like to ask our administrator, Ms. Takia Dowse, if she would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand?
Let us pray. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, as we pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. O God, thou who spoke into nothing and created everything, we pause, recognizing your sovereignty and supreme power. We acknowledge that you alone are God, and beside you, there is no other. We come asking for your divine intervention as we attempt to exercise responsible stewardship to the positions of which we have been elected or appointed by the citizens of Augusta, Richmond County. Forgive us of our sins of omission and commission, that our actions might not hinder our prayers from being heard. We thank you even more for the blood of your Son, Jesus, whose propitiation granted us the right to come into your divine presence. We beseech you, therefore, O Heavenly Father, to bless us with the right mindset, that we might remember our responsibility to represent the citizenship of Augusta, Richmond County. Help us, dear Master, not to be so rigid and agenda-driven that we fail to be reasonable confronting our proposed decisions. Help us to be reminded of our common humanity, that this commission chamber might be transformed into a table of communion, where we are all reminded of what we have in common, as opposed to focusing on our differences. We thank you in advance for granting us the power to move our city forward. We thank you in advance for this commission, that it might manifest through your divine power the manifestation of all that is put before it today in a manner that would be pleasing to you. So, Father, we put it all in your hands and declare that it is done. It is in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ, that we offer this prayer. And we believe in faith that this will be the manifestation of this day here in this chamber. So we simply say thank you, Jesus, and amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to take a personal opportunity. Reverend Chris Leslie, would you please come forward? To call you Reverend Chris, being that we grew up in the halls of Mount Calvary for many, many years, and to see that God has now called you to be one of his prime spokespersons. We appreciate your coming today to invoke God's presence on our behalf. We truly appreciate you and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Please accept our deepest gratitude, and we value the spiritual insight and guidance you shared with us today, and your thoughtfulness as an act of service for God. We receive it as an act. May he bless you with peace and love for your kindness shown toward us today. By these presents be it known that Reverend Chris Leslie, pastor of the Walnut Grove Baptist Church, is the chaplain of the day. May his spiritual guidance and civic leadership serves as an example for all citizens of Augusta. Given under my hand this 5th day of September 2023, Garnett L. Johnson, Mayor.
Reverend Leslie, thank you so much for that much needed prayer. We appreciate you, sir. Have a great and blessed rest of the day. Thank you. Madam Clerk, before we continue, I want to provide a point of privilege from the Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we begin, I wanted to just take an opportunity to acknowledge our Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Maurice McDowell. You know, we ought to take an opportunity to thank our directors when they do something really well. And this year, we've had a wonderful candlelight music series down at the Commons. Sunday, I believe, was the last concert. It was an all-white affair, and there was about 3,100 plus people there. And I want to just personally thank Mr. McDowell for the work that he and his team pulled off this year to make that an interesting concert series. There were a few Sundays where we couldn't go because of the rain, but at the moment we were able to get back out there, they excelled. They exceeded our expectations. And so, Mr. McDowell, to you and to your entire team, thank you for what you're doing. And I hope that we'll be able to figure out a way to expand that in the future. So my hat goes off to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 1st. Madam Clerk, we're ready to continue. I think there's one addendum item we need to add to the delegation portion if there's no objection.
It's on the screen.
And it should be on the screen, and it's probably my fault and my office's fault, and that we knew that CSX was planning to come talk to us, and Mr. Craig Camuso is here, so if there's no objection from my colleagues, we'd like to hear what he's planning to do with that Olive Road Bridge, as well as provide some dialogue as to how we could hopefully bring an end to this recurrent issue. So looking at the screen, if there's no objection to any of my colleagues, we'd like to add this addenda item to the delegation portion of this meeting.
No objection.
No objection, Madam
Okay.
Clerk.
Thank you.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, we'll start with Mr. Craig Camuso, if you don't mind reading to the
Okay.
official record.
Mr. Craig Camuso, Vice President of the State Government Relations for CSX, discussion pertaining to the elevation of the Olive Street Bridge.
Olive Street Bridge. That's the Olive Road Bridge. Mr. Camuso, if you don't mind, come up to the podium, sir, and for the record, please state your name and address.
Yes, sir. My name is Craig Camuso with CSX Transportation. I live at 861 Commons Park in Statham, Georgia. Not too far.
Not far at all. Great, Oconee County, Georgia. Sir, thank you for being here. A while back, you and I think Commissioner from the 5th, we had a meeting discussing your intentions for the Olive Road Bridge. If you don't mind, can you bring this body up to speed as to what your plans are?
Yes, sir. And thank you. Really appreciate members of the commission the opportunity to come and talk to you about Olive Road Bridge. I do want to just give you a little bit of a kind of an update on what we're doing. I did talk with Commissioner Guilfoyle, thank you. And also, as I was walking in today, was able to talk with Commissioner Jordan. And just really what I want to do is begin a conversation, begin a dialogue about an issue that has been really towards the top of the agenda for CSX for a number of years. I think all of you, or most of you at least, are familiar with Olive Road Bridge, the railroad there. We run overhead there, and it has been the unfortunate to have a high number of hits, vehicles striking that bridge. Especially, it seems to have increased over about the last 3 years. CSX has over 9,000 bridges on its network. We operate in about a 28-state region. If you think of a line that runs east from New Orleans to Memphis to Chicago to Detroit, going east, we operate in just about every one of those states. And of all the bridges that we have, this one and another one in Athens, Georgia, believe it or not, are two of the most struck bridges on our network. The difference between the one in Athens and the one here in Augusta is that when this bridge is struck, frequently it knocks our tracks out of alignment. And just the last estimate that I received from our engineers here is over the last 3 years, we've spent about $250,000 just to fix the tracks there. It knocks the tracks out of alignment. So not only do we have to go in and fix those tracks, we lose track time, are unable to move freight through that area. So we also lose that as well. So we had a couple of strikes here recently, early in the spring, and thanks to a friend of mine who knows the mayor, we just had a real impromptu meeting and discussion about what can we start to think of ways to fix this. Because one thing that we want is, we can talk about losing track time, we can talk about replacing the rail, but our biggest issue is safety. We are concerned not only for the safety of those that travel that road and at times run the risk of hitting that bridge, we're also concerned about the safety of our employees. And as someone said to me last week with the company, it's just a matter of time before a car or a truck is going to be going under that bridge. They're going to hit that bridge while a train's going over it. And then we really have a problem, potentially. So we have, and this is something that we've discussed not just with the mayor. I've talked with representatives from the city. I know that the staff of the city has done a great job trying everything they can to alert people that, hey, this is a low bridge. I have traveled the road with members of the city. We have talked about, for CSX, and we know this is not going to happen, but the best way to eliminate this is to close the road. Now, we know that's probably not in the future, because we do know that the detour route there is something that would be a little bit difficult for the public and for those that live along that detour route. So separate of that, what do we do? One of the things that we talked about and discussed doing were to reinforce the bridge. Now, the cost for us to reinforce that bridge is pretty high, like approaching $1 million for CSX. Now, if we reinforce that bridge, however, the next vehicle that hits that bridge is going to remember it. We don't want that to happen. We really don't want that to happen. We have decided, and Mayor, I haven't even told you this, we've decided to put that off at a minimum the first or second quarter of next year, while we continue to have a dialogue with this body as well as with the staff of Augusta to see what can be done. Now, the work that we were going to do on that bridge would raise the bridge a grand total of 2 inches. So not something that is going to make a huge impact. So the other thing is, can we lower the road? Now, I don't know if that's even possible. But what we do want to do is try to determine what action can be taken to eliminate these strikes from occurring. And I know that Commissioner Gorfel has thought about some few things. Have not had a chance to really discuss this in depth with Commissioner Jordan, but definitely want to continue those conversations, and of course with you, Mayor, and the staff as well. So we're here, like I'm here today, really to just begin that conversation, to let you know that this is something that CSX is very much concerned with and wants to look at what remedies we can occur. And I want to thank the commission, the mayor, for your attention to this as well.
Thank you, sir. There's a colleague in the queue, but first of all, I want to thank you for your commitment in helping us fix this. This has been many generations problem that's occurred, and hopefully now we could have a conversation about how we can resolve it for future generations. The chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Wayne Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Camuso, thank you for coming before this body and letting us know what CSX is going to be doing. I know that y'all going to be spending between what you already have spent to fix every time somebody hit it to replace, and you're going to spend a little bit over $1.25 million in raising it up 2 inches. Is there anything that the CSX could do to help out Augusta, putting up kind of warning, the curtains, et cetera?
Right. Yes, sir. I know there's been a lot done already with you go down that road. It looks like a house at Christmas. I mean, there's so many lights there. One of the challenges that we face here with over 9,000 bridges is things that are done along the road are really considered traffic control devices. As a matter of fact, the railroad So the bells, gates, and arms that you see at some grade crossings, those are not determined to be put up by the railroad. Those are determined to be put up usually by the state DOT because it's a traffic control device. Other things that have been discussed, and I know there's been some things that have been talked about, again, would be considered by the company to be a traffic control device. Now, one thing that we did talk about, and I don't know if this is a possibility, but there's an awful lot of money that's coming down right now from Washington for infrastructure improvements. The possibility of an overpass, not at necessarily at that road, but at maybe a road nearby. Again, I don't know if that's something that's in the that is something that could be done. Obviously, it would take some research, but a lot of times those are 80-20 matches, and CSX would be willing, if in an overpass standpoint, to go in for the 20% match to pay, possibly up to 50% of that, because the amount of money that we could possibly spend for that bridge, we'd be willing to put that towards an overpass because we know that would eliminate the problem. Giving people an option to go over that is something. As far as other things that can be done, I know we've talked about, do we put a laser out there to alert? Do we other flashing lights at the bridge, or even, I believe, I'm going to say not my words, but not the official words, balloons or something that come down that if a vehicle were to hit that, would that alert them? That's something that we would hesitate to contribute to, only because it's more of a traffic control device. Liability comes into play with that, and does it make it foolproof? Does it make it foolproof?
Right. I will say this, that our traffic engineer, John Ushery, he's done a wonderful job. He's actually tried to put every preventive measure to keep people from hitting the bridge. And, I mean, went from blinking lights to numerous signs to painting the warning signs on the bridge itself. I don't know what else he can do. I know that he's probably exhausted on it, number one. But a week and a half ago, somebody had hit the bridge again. It's actually become a joke for Augusta. Anytime somebody hits the bridge, it hits the media outlets, and it's crazy. But here's the problem I see, Mr. Camuso, is the fact that the people who's usually hitting it, number one, they can't afford to hit it because they probably be moving from one residence to the other, and then when they do hit it, they just lost everything, basically what they do have. What it costs us as far as our resources, from the fire department to the police department to the ambulance, it ties them up for many hours. And then the citizens that lives around is affected by the detours. I'm going to actually fall back. I know that some of my colleagues, I don't know if anybody has anything to say, but the solution that I was discussing with you about is the curtain. From my research, it definitely, it's the only thing that we've seen successfully in other cities utilize. We won't know how many trucks it will save because they will deter once they hit the curtain. For the colleagues as well as the people in the audience, Natasha, can I ask you to put up that picture of the curtain? And I actually have, yesterday, I went to work and then actually came home and did a mock-up of what the curtain would be like. And what this is, and the bottom of that, each one of these PVC pipes with chains in it, that's basically what it is. And this is set at the height, the bottom of the bridge. And then any truck that's taller than that bridge is going to hit the PVC pipe. And it doesn't do any damage, but it wakes up the driver. I know I would like to hear from the traffic engineer. I know he's exhausted, but what I've seen in other cities is it's about a $26,000 cost. And I know that the CSX doesn't have any endeavors to help pay for any of this because it's not y'all's responsibility on the road. But I know that you was checking with your engineers, and I believe they said that anything that could help works, you know?
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning Mr. Ussery's name, because that's who I have worked with in the past, and he's been fantastic to work with. And like I said, came out here, and he and I drove all over the place one afternoon trying to look at this and come up with solutions.
Right. So I'm going to get off and let my colleagues speak. That's a half of a non-truck chuck if somebody wanted to.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 10th. Mr. Camuso, one question. As you have spent $250,000 in repairing this bridge, were you able to recoup any of that cost through insurance claims from the folks that hit it?
No, sir, we have not. And I think to your point is the cost of that is something that usually who does hit the bridge, it's just quicker for us to go ahead and fix it and move on than it would be to try to then go back and recoup those losses.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These apparatuses are pretty cool looking. Sean Franham and I thought we were getting ready to have an old-fashioned Terry Funk hardcore match up here. Question for you, Mr. Camuso. What would the cost for something like this be for those PVC pipes hanging? Installation, cost of all that maintenance. How much are you thinking about that?
Right. I think the commissioner mentioned it. You said $20,000, $26,000.
Is that a number that you're aware of, that you're comfortable with speaking on, or?
No, sir. I'm not. I'm not aware. I've not done that research on that.
Okay. If the city were to go down this road, how much could CSX potentially kick in to help with this, being that it's going to help you all, it's going to help us? What type of partnership could we look into if we decided to go down this road?
Yes, sir, and that's a very valid question. We would be hesitant to participate, and the reason being is that we're not a traffic control company, we're a railroad company. So this would be considered a traffic control device, and we just don't participate in those. And part of that is because of the number of bridges and the number of grade crossings that operate that are on our network. It would be difficult for us to really commit even to a cost like that. That being said, I would be willing to go back and ask the company.
So, and is that a concern on liability on y'all's end?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I believe that we have the same concern on ours as well. But anyways, we'll go back to that one. What is your clearance for that bridge? You said that you were interested in raising the bridge. How many inches did you say?
Yeah, it's if we do the bridge work, it would increase the clearance by about 2 inches.
2 inches.
Not a lot.
So how would that impact the current clearance? If you raise it by 2 inches and the truck is 2 inches above that,
right.
How would that impact the goal here?
I personally, I don't believe it would impact it much, and I think really the point is that we are looking at spending that much money to reinforce the bridge, so to make the bridge able to withstand a hit like that, and only get a 2-inch clearance. So the point is that it wouldn't have a major impact on the bridge. I'm not aware when something hits the bridge, does it hit it by a foot? Does it hit it by 6 inches or 2 inches? I don't know that. I don't have that data. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe it would eliminate a whole lot of amount of those strikes.
So if the city's not able to commit to any funding for this type of project, what could we commit to as a collaborative to make sure that this bridge does not become an issue anymore? Are we at that point in having that conversation?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think today is kind of the beginning of that conversation. So I don't view this as the end of the dialogue. I view this as really the beginning of the dialogue to talk about things just like that.
Thank you, Mr. Camuso. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Attorney Brown, I want to ask you, talking liability, with creating something like this, what would be the liability for the city?
I've had a prior discussion with the engineering. I did not know this agenda item was going to be placed today. That was some time ago. And I would rather go back to speak with engineering again, but I can tell you on a preliminary basis, placing any device in the right-of-way that's not a state or federally approved traffic control device would be risky for Augusta. That's the very reason CSX doesn't want any part of this idea. So only the devices that should be placed are those that are approved. And I cannot say absolutely this would not be one. I'm not aware that it is, but we had some time to look at it. We could develop an opinion about it.
Thank you. Mr. Camusa, I'm aware that someone's actually lost their life at that bridge. Many years ago, unfortunately, a young man, as a result of someone hitting in the opposite direction, knocked a beam loose. I don't know who's responsible for that liability, but as I travel and go through parking decks, there are these PVC pipes under every single parking deck in the city, I think. And I don't know who accepts that liability for anybody trying to enter a parking deck that's above their height, but it would seem to me, and I'm not an attorney, that we should be able to come up with some solution to where we can make this bridge a little bit safer and hopefully keep you more operational and save downtime for many of those who go to church and travel that road so often. So I'm going to go back to my commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Yes, sir. It seems like we keep going down this road. I'd like to ask the attorney a question, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Attorney Brown.
Yes.
As far as these other cities that has implemented this curtain, I don't know how they done it without, opposition from their attorney. How do we find out, shall I say?
Commissioner Guilfoyle, you do not have opposition from your attorney.
Okay, tell me what I do have from my attorney then.
You have advice based upon, I think, the subject matter experts who really should be consulted regarding this matter, which is the engineering department.
Okay, but when it comes to a legal matter, it goes to the legal department. Would that be correct?
Yes, it is, but what is a permitted traffic control device is an engineering subject matter.
Okay. With the 32
And,
devices we have out there now.
Also, I don't know where you got your comps from. Was it for the state of Georgia? Was it another state?
This was in Kansas City, sir.
Yes, another state that may be controlled otherwise. Was it also a state or federal highway? There are many variables. If we had been notified prior to this meeting that this was going to be a subject matter, we could have a more definitive opinion about it. But I'll be very happy, as I said before, to speak with engineering, and engineering already has some ideas about this particular traffic device, whether they are able at this moment to say it or not. But the inquiry eventually has to go to engineering.
Thank you, Attorney Brown. Apparently there has been discussion on this with the engineer, so I'll reach out to the engineer. Thank you.
Well,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
what we will do as we start this discussion a little bit more in depth is I will get the people that are the experts that know a lot more about this than me.
You got it.
To involve and work with either members of the commission or with Mr. Ussery and his department.
Certainly. And Ms. Camusa, I would ask that instead of spending $1 million, you're giving this $26,000 an opportunity to see if it can work. I think it's probably in the best interest of not only the city but CSX. So
I don't disagree.
On behalf of the mayor's office, I'm going to ask to help with some part of this if there's any conversation for that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleague from the 10th said that the engineering department has been involved in this. Dr. Malik, would you be willing to talk on this, or John, someone talk about the liability? Because I think that's the question that's at hand. I just want to make sure we're fact checking that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I have done some research, and again, it hasn't been exhaustive because I didn't know we were going to talk about this today, but there's two things that I keep in mind whenever someone asks for a new traffic control device in the public right-of-way. And safety is always our top concern, as it should be, just like CSX mentioned. As far as I can tell, and again, this is not an exhaustive search, so this isn't the end-all be-all, but in the state of Georgia, a device like this is not an approved traffic control device. Now, it doesn't mean there isn't one that is approved. I have not seen this particular device that has been approved, but I definitely would be willing to work with the Attorney's Office and CSX and to try to find out the definitive answer for you.
Can I suspend you for just one quick pause you for one quick moment.
Yes, sir.
You said something like this is not an approved traffic control device in the state of Georgia?
As far as I can tell, but again, I haven't done an exhaustive search to give you a definitive answer.
So we're not even to the point to even talk about funding or anything at this point until we figure out if we can legally do this, correct?
Correct. I think the CSX representative has a great idea. Let's start the dialogue. Let's get all the correct people in the room, and then we can go through what is approved, what isn't been approved, and you know, we can see what the options are to us. Just as a side note, $25,000. If something like that were to go in, it wouldn't cover the cost of something like that. Just the arm and the pole itself would be quite a bit more expensive than that. Not maybe by orders of a couple, well, maybe $10 or $20,000. So that's just off the top of my head. But yeah, 25 doesn't get you a whole lot these days.
Thank you, Mr. Usry.
Thank you, Mr. Ursery. All right, so I guess our next steps are to continue this dialogue with Mr. Camuso to see if we can, see if it is permissible from the state of Georgia to see if this traffic control device can be implemented. Commissioner from the 10.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Bonner, can you put this on the committee for a month from now, 30 days from now, to have traffic control and the legal to present us with something? 30 days should be suffice, I would imagine, because we discussed this about a month and a half ago.
Mr. Camuso, are you aware of any other device like this? You mentioned Athens and Augusta. You know any other community that has something like this that's in place in the state of Georgia?
No, sir, I am not. I have asked, and we are doing some research on that, but currently I'm not aware of one.
All right, thank you. All right, sir, we certainly welcome your time and your presence here today. Looking forward to continued dialogue and your helping us resolve this. Thank you so much. Have a great day. All right, Madam Clerk, let's continue the delegation portion of this meeting.
Okay. Our next delegation, Ms. Nike Meyer, regarding instant runoff voting.
Ms. Meyer, thank you so much for being here for today. If you don't mind, for the record, please state your name and address.
Nike Meyer, 2007 Lanier Drive in Augusta.
Thank you, ma'am. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your time. Today I'd like to ask for your consideration in helping.
Ms. Meyer, can we get you to speak closer to the mic? Thank you.
Is this a little better?
Yes.
Okay,
much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Today I'd like to ask for your consideration in helping to bring the option of instant runoff voting to Richmond County. Instant runoff voting is also known as ranked choice voting. There are many reasons this adjustment to the voting system would be beneficial to all of us, but I will briefly present two just now. The evidence shows that the change to instant runoff voting would help save us money and encourage voter turnout. I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that holding runoff elections costs a lot of time and money. I don't have the exact numbers for how much the runoff elections have cost Richmond County, but for context, a study by Kennesaw State estimated the Senate runoffs in 2021 cost Georgia $75 million. These runoff elections can also be easily missed even by engaged and active voters. For example, there was a 28% turnout of registered voters for our initial mayoral race in May 2022, but in the runoff election in June only saw a 19% turnout. It was 21% to 15% in District 2, and in District 10 the fall-off was 30% to 20%. With instant runoff voting, those races could have been decided with one election and far more voter input. Now, I realize our current system worked in all of your favor, so you may be asking why we should change it. Well, first, there's no reason to say the outcomes would change. However, you would be saving taxpayer money and preventing all of the extra campaigning and stress that comes with runoffs. Indeed, requiring candidates to earn at least 50% is a very good thing, but there is a better, more streamlined way to go about it. This is how the instant runoff system works in a race with 3 or more candidates. If none of the candidates receives at least 50% of the first choice votes, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. The ballots for the eliminated candidate are then retallied towards those voters' second choices. This continues until a candidate receives enough votes to earn the majority. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the benefits of instant runoff voting. Elimination of the spoiler effect, less partisanship, civil campaigns, more choices, and greater voter confidence are a few more. Even in nonpartisan races, you would be empowered to run a campaign that excites voters instead of one that focuses on having the fewest negatives. The system is already in use in many municipalities and statewide in Alaska and Maine. It has been favorably reviewed by voters and elected officials alike. I believe in this so strongly that I have started volunteering for a nonprofit organization called Better Ballot Georgia, In order for Georgia cities or counties to be able to use instant runoff voting, the Georgia General Assembly must pass legislation allowing them to do so. There is a bill currently before the Georgia House that will allow counties and municipalities to choose whether or not they would like to adopt instant runoff voting. Other municipalities have passed resolutions to support this. I have with me today an example of a resolution that the City of Holly Springs in Cherokee County has passed. What I'm asking you is to consider adopting your own resolution for Augusta to help bring the option of instant runoff voting here. Thank you so much for your time. Let me know if you have any questions.
Ms. Meyer, certainly thank you for being here today. My question to you from the mayor's office is, are you engaged at the state level to be having this discussion with our Georgia General Assembly?
So the organization Better Ballot Georgia is working on the state level.
All right. Any colleagues? I don't see, well, I see a colleague from the first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to do this all day, I promise. Just wanted to shed light. Thank you for what you're asking for. I think the better route to take would be to go through the Board of Elections, because they have a board that governs election processes here. Okay. And any kind of collaboration between the Board of Elections and the Board of Commissioners, I believe once we get to a place of a potential decision, we will have that type of collaboration. But the Board of Elections is located on the 5th floor. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, I think I'm wrong. Am I right? The 5th floor? Mm-hmm. 5th floor, all right. You go to the Board of Elections, they're located on the 5th floor, and you can request to get on their agenda to present the same question there, and you'll probably get much further there than what you would here initially.
Well, this is just to get a resolution going. A lot of other cities and municipalities are participating in sending a resolution to the General Assembly just to show their support. Because right now we're not even allowed to do this. We have to get that legislation going first. So I was just hoping for, I have copies if anybody wants to see just the.
Could you submit it to our clerk? To our clerk. Ms. Bonner, if you would. Thank you. And then just make sure you go by the Board of Elections office as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer.
Ms. Meyer, thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day. Madam Clerk, I think we're to that agenda portion of this meeting.
Yes, sir. That takes us to our consent agenda, which consists of items 1 through 32. Items 1 through 32. For the benefit of any objectors to our alcohol petition, once the petition is read, would you signify your objection by raising your hand? Call your attention to item number 1. It's a motion to approve new ownership for a retail package liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with the Stevens Creek Wine and Spirits located at 1061 Stevens Creek Road. Are there any objectors to this alcohol petition?
Any objectors? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, let's get, well, ma'am, I see a hand. Yes, sir. You're an objector? Yes. All right.
Okay.
There is an objector.
To the alcohol petition. We only have one. Okay. All right. Our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 32 with an objector on item number 1.
All right, let's go through the queue. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Mr. Mayor, if my colleagues don't mind, if we could add agenda item number 33, 34, and 36 to the consent.
33, 34, 36, 33. Any objectors? Not. Let's. Wait a minute. I see the administrator has her. Madam Administrator.
Mayor Johnson, number 34 has already been approved by the body. It was added in error.
That is right.
Please delete.
All right, so we're deleting number 34. All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, did he say they add 35 to consent?
Put a little bit closer to you, Mike, a little closer to you.
No, sir.
He did not add 35 to consent, correct?
No, sir, he didn't.
Okay, and I have a question about number 9, and I want to pull, I forgot what number it is, where we're giving, I want to pull number 26 for a short discussion. and number 25 for a
Number
short discussion.
26.
Number 26, 25, and I did want to ask the administrator a question, if I'm okay with that. Administrator, are we having a workshop for number 9?
We will have a right-of-way workshop, which will also include maintenance. That was an item that was approved in August.
So when is the workshop for number 9?
The date has not been finalized.
I want to pull number 9 also.
Number 9, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Franham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going to pull agenda item number 5, please, if someone would like to speak on that. Number 5.
Number 5.
Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Motion to approve as stated.
Second.
We're pulling it. Yeah, we're pulling it. Number 1. Item number 1. Yes, sir, we're pulling item 1.
Yeah, you need to hurry up.
We're deleting item 34. Yeah, delete 34. And 33.
Right.
36, yeah.
33, 30.
We're voting, sir. You good?
Ma'am? Yes, ma'am, we're voting.
He said we're voting. He said we're voting. Okay.
All right, we're voting.
That motion carries
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
with Ms. McKnight and Mr. Mason absent.
All right, Madam Clerk. Let's continue top to bottom.
All right, thank you. Item number 1 on our public services agenda is a motion to approve the new ownership request liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Stephen Creek Wine and Spirits located at 1061 Stephen Creek Road. We have an objector, sir.
Yes, ma'am, we do. And we have somebody. Director Delaney.
Well, he needs,
All right.
what is it, objection?
All right. Come on up. Mr. Green, good day, sir. If you will, for record, please state your name and address.
Brian Green, 2479 Mount Auburn. I didn't anticipate, I just stopped by here today on a little break from work. I didn't anticipate speaking. My only concern was as far as where we're trying to go as a community. You know, when I hear, and based on some recent events, we'll say, issues, I have a concern about that. So when I hear liquor license expansion, new liquor license and whatever, I just ask myself, what's the top off here in Augusta on what our makeup is? Is this something that really we can use here in our city? No offense to those people, they're probably upstanding people that run that business. Certainly nothing against them. I've visited, patronized package stores myself. I just was compelled to raise my hand, but just to say, if we're gonna be expanding such businesses as alcohol and discotheques or whatever you want to call them, nightclubs in that center, let's really take a minute to scrutinize the situation. Is it really, really benefiting the community more so than that particular business owner? Is it something we want to add to our current, situation here in Richmond County? So I hope my objection is not taken out of context. I just felt compelled to do it then, and that's no offense towards those business owners who I'm sure they're upstanding people.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th. You may want to stay there just in case he has a question, sir, if you don't mind.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. Madam Clerk, we're voting.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, madam. Let's continue.
Item number 5, motion to receive a donation from the Trust of Oakland Park. Commissioner Frandom pulled this item.
Commissioner from the 5th. Chair recognizes you,
Yeah,
sir. I'm sorry, Commissioner from the 7th.
No worries. The director asked that the gentleman wanted to speak on this donation. It's for the trust. If he can just ask him to state his name and address.
All right. Good afternoon, sir. If you don't mind, for the record, please state your name and address.
My name is Brian Halterman, address 956 Hickman Road. And I'm here on behalf of Hickman Park. Just to locate it for some of you, Hickman Park is a small park. I think it's just a little over 2 acres. If you went up Walton Way and you took a left on Hickman Road, went a couple hundred yards, that would be the location of Hickman Park. Hickman Park is a small park, yet it is highly used by all kinds of people, both in our neighborhood and other neighborhoods. We've had a healthy relationship with the Parks and Recreation Department over the last 3 or 4 years, including Parks and Recreation installing a new playground equipment and recently renewing a lease on the park. And finally, the neighbors have raised $5,000 to help resurface the tennis court, which frankly has needed resurfacing for 5 or 10 years. And we're looking forward to continuing our partnership with Maurice McDowell and the rest of his staff to try to get this to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman.
Questions?
Commissioner.
To approve.
I'm sorry, who's that, Mr. Guilfoyle?
Mr. Frandom. Commissioner Frandom, and it was seconded by Commissioner from the
Mr.
9th.
Scott.
Commissioner Scott.
Okay.
So I have a motion and a second. Seeing no commissioners in the queue, we're prepared to vote. Voting, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Ms. Guilfoyle's out. Okay, go ahead. That motion carries with Mr. Guilfoyle out.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Alderman, tach you for being here, sir. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay. Takes us to item number 9.
All right.
Is a motion to approve the right sizing plan as presented. Commissioner Bobby Williams asked for this.
All right, Commissioner Williams, I see you are ahead of the commissioner from the 7th, but since this is your item, you have the floor, sir.
Well, I just want to say one thing. I think I pretty much understand the right sizing plan, but I understand that there is, correct me if I'm wrong, Administrator, there is a workshop that is planned for this, correct?
That is correct. My office sent over September 15th as a proposed date. However, I'm waiting on confirmation from the body as to if that date is a suitable date for the majority of the body.
Gotcha. And, this is just, not something thrown out for debate or what have you, but I do think that we should wait for a final vote until after the workshop, because then we should be able to ask questions and understand the right sizing plan as it is to be understood as the administrator wants to give it to us. So I just want to put out there a motion to just wait until after the workshop for a final vote on this.
All right.
Second.
All right. So there's a motion and a second on the substitute motion of waiting. All right. Before we vote, I see another commissioner from the first, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dowse, is this a workshop on the actual right sizing plan, or is this a workshop on the grounds maintenance portion of your plan, the right-of-way maintenance, all of that stuff we've been talking about? Is this two separate workshops or one workshop?
It is one workshop in which the commission has requested to discuss right-of-way maintenance as well as grounds maintenance. So no, sir, it is not a workshop for the right sizing plan directly.
All right, thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion, secondary motion to delay this action until after a workshop. Seeing no other colleagues in the queue, I see Commissioner from the 5th, you're still in. Are you good?
I'm good.
You good? All right. Let's vote on this substitute motion, please.
I do have.
Okay, I'm sorry. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 2nd.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Administrator Dowse, for the right sizing plan, is it just a blueprint of what, like a start to the plan that can be altered?
Yes, ma'am. It is a plan of recommended activities as well as solutions that the body could implement to save Augusta overall. It is by no way a direct path that has to be cemented and followed directly. It has room for, it is amenable to any flexible options, but it is just a groundwork for a path forward that has room for adjustments as needed.
So may I direct a question to Commissioner Williams? Thank you, Administrator Dowse.
Yes, go ahead.
So Commissioner Williams, are you suggesting that after we have the meeting, we're saying right now the proposed date is the 15th for the workshop, possibly? Are you saying then put this back on the agenda to vote it up or vote it down, the right sizing plan, once we get the information from the grounds maintenance?
Sure. What I'm saying is that, just like the question you just asked, I don't think everybody understands fully, what this is. So if we have a workshop, we'll be in the room. We can ask questions and understand exactly which way we're going with this. And if you vote it up, then you suffer the good and the bad or whatever that comes out of it. So yeah, just put it back on and vote it up or down. I'm not saying squash it or throw it away. I'm just saying get the information before we vote on it.
Thank you.
Madam Administrator, Madam Clerk, I think the 15th, we originally thought about using the 15th, but we're going to have some out-of-town guests in that day. That's why the 15th is not a good day in that the Hub Initiative. We're going to have some guests.
We found out after,
okay.
after the date was placed out that your office notified, but I have not heard from the commission, a majority of the commission objecting to the date as is our practice when it was sent out. And after we were after the notice went out, we were notified your office of a possible conflict with one of your events.
Certainly. So through the Hub Initiative, we're expecting guests from the Department of Energy and other guests on that day. So, we had asked that perhaps we look at another date and that it's going to be a busy day with, again, very important out-of-town guests. I don't know if we were able to, was there a proposed date?
Well, we were acting in concert with the direction from the commission to hold a work session within 30 days.
Okay.
And prior to that, the budget calendar had already been approved. Okay. So dates were already set aside for budget meetings with the administrative department directors and that sort of thing. So in order to meet the directive of the commission, the 15th was the date. Was scheduled for the 15th, and that's the reason behind that date.
Okay. I guess the conversation from this body is we can proceed with the 15th, but just note that it will be a busy day and that we will have out-of-town guests.
Yeah, I'm just looking for direction.
That'd be too much in one day.
I don't think so. And some days you gotta do 2 meetings.
Madam Administrator.
Mayor Johnson, if the 15th does not work, I would ask for additional time to work on scheduling.
Well, it would take the will of this body to move it from the 15th. According to the Madam Clerk, there's not been a consensus of enough commissioners to be willing to move the date. So if the date's not moved, it's going to be the 15th, and we'll just have to work in both events, a workshop, and visitation from, I know from the Department of Energy, Secretary Jennifer Granholm will be in town, as well as others. So.
Yeah, as long as we have food and water.
8 a.m.?
As long as we have food and water, we'll be fine.
8 a.m. Morning meeting will work because generally the guests don't arrive till mid-morning. So if you guys want to do a 9 o'clock meeting, 8 or 9 o'clock meeting, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So is there consensus to keep it on the 15th?
Yep.
15th?
That'd be fun.
All right. All right, we're going to keep it on the 15th, early morning meeting, Madam Clerk. Work session. All right, let's keep on going through the queue. I see the commissioner from the 10th. Well, we got a substitute motion that's out there.
It's the motion.
Just
This
a
was
motion?
a proposed
All right.
recommendation
A
from the
recommendation.
committee.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make sure that the limited conversation just ain't going to be on the grounds and maintenance. It's going to be on the entire package of the right size, and no problem with that.
All right. Madam Administrator.
I don't have the approval in front of me, but if I recall correctly, the work session was to be on right-of-way maintenance as well as grounds maintenance, not the right sizing plan.
right.
So please,
Okay.
just for clarity's sake.
And I've just been made aware that our guests will be here from 9 to 3, but we'll cover however we can. Commissioner from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, Ms. Dallas, if we push this to a workshop, that portion of the workshop, how does that affect the entire plan as a whole? I mean, because I know we all got to a place last Tuesday to where we felt good. You had a few colleagues say it was a great plan. We agreed that it was a working document. We had it all cemented. If we take this to a workshop, how does it affect the plan in whole, its implementation?
By holding off on approving the right sizing plan until after the work session, it only delays the planning efforts for the mass consolidation of right-of-way maintenance as well as grounds maintenance into a grounds division for the Central Services Department. There's other facets of the plan that don't involve right-of-way maintenance as well as grounds maintenance. And while I understand several department directors have been very vocal about their concerns regarding right-of-way maintenance as well as grounds maintenance, those finite details have yet to be flushed out because as I presented to the commission was an overarching plan, a general idea. I've also requested that the details be presented to you during a budget session, which that information can be presented to you during the work session on the 15th.
So that was my main question. That was my main concern. So portions of what we're talking about with the right sizing plan that we want to dig into are budget questions, which will be handled at the budget workshop. And then the ground maintenance portion of the right sizing plan is what we intend to handle during this workshop on the 15th. Am I understanding correctly?
That was my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I don't have any opposition to pushing off, but what I will say is that I think we should go ahead and approve this right sizing plan and handle budgetary questions during the budget and handle the ground maintenance portion during our ground maintenance workshop, because we've been pushing this around for quite some time. But I'm not going to, like we said, we're not going to debate it too much. But I think we've already kind of gone through this and come to some type of agreement. But I'll yield, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett. Commissioner from the 8th has yielded. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second that's on the floor. Seeing no further commissioners in the queue, we're voting.
Ms. Bonner, would you please restate the motion?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is to approve the right sizing plan as presented until after the September 15, 2023 work session.
All right, colleagues voting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner second.
So we're approving it as presented?
No, we're asking for a work session before.
Okay.
That motion carries 7-1, with Mr. Johnson voting no.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's continue.
That takes us to item number 25, I believe. 25 is to approve funding in the amount of $310,000 from the contingency fund as an emergency procurement for the replacement of locks and hinges at the jail, and defer to the administrator to come back with a recommendation on the funding for the new jail pod.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
All right, I'm pretty much understanding this, but $310,000 just for locks, but also, Ms. Administrator, Madam Administrator, am I saying it right, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This thing about new jail pod, that is, we're just putting that off, correct?
Commissioner, that would be a better question for the maker of the motion, as I was unaware of the jail pod conversation prior to the committee meeting as of last week.
It has a part in here where it says to defer to the administrator to come back with recommendation on funding for the new jail pod. So I'm just making sure, my understanding is that there was some conversation about a bond or what have you. The conversations that I had with people stated that we would more or less look at this during the SPLOST. So right now, this is just a conversation, no motion or whatever has been made about moving forward with anything on the jail pod.
Correct.
Okay. If there's no more conversation, I just make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. And there's a second from the first. I see Commissioner Guilfoyle in the queue. Commissioner Guilfoyle, Chair recognizes you, sir.
Just to bring Commissioner Williams up to speed on this, what we was asking for the jail pod, it actually, from 3 years ago to now, the price of the jail pod had went up $13 million. If we wait for the next splosh, that'll be 3-4 years down the road before we get financing for it. So I was actually tasking the administrator to find alternatives, no different than what we done at the municipal building here. We considered this blighted area, and as far as the footprint, and we was able to go through the URA to apply for bonds, and then actually figure enough for the interest. So it's an interest-only loan. It'll pay its way until the next splosh is passed. The challenge that we had faced was what happens if the next splosh does not pass, and so that's the reason why we had tasked the administrator to come up with that, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. We're prepared to vote.
Are we voting?
Yes, sir. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're moving to item, next item.
26.
26.
Item 26, a motion to approve funding in the amount of $30,000 for the shortfall for the 2023 Arts in the Hearts Festival funded from the contingency fund.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to figure out, how do we get a shortfall with Arts in the Heart? Didn't we give them a bunch of money at one time? The sheriff, and he just walked out the door, didn't he? He was sitting right there.
He addressed it last week, sir.
He went from $30 to $40 an hour. So this is just for security?
That is correct, Commissioner.
Lord have mercy. Ms. Williams.
Second.
Is there a motion? Come on.
All right. Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and there's a second. We're voting, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Mr.
All right.
Guilfoyle? Oh, yeah. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's continue.
Okay. I would think that takes us for the items that were pulled. Our next item is item number 35. Discuss requesting each department within Augusta Richmond County government model a 5% and 10% budget cut to include the general expenditure funding accounts.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I guess I'll chime in on this, is that I made the request. As we enter the budget season, I'm asking every department to model. This is not an implementation. Let me make that clear. This is just a model, a 5 and 10% budget reduction and how it affects your budgets, whether it means a reduction in headcount, a reduction into the services offered to our constituents. But at times like this, I think, sometimes doing these exercises gives us, one, accountability and transparency to the taxpayer, which I think we desperately need. But it also, in my opinion, keeps us in line with our priorities as we go through these budget challenges. I'm from the private sector, and this is something that happens on a normal and a routine basis. Following state government, it happens often on a normal and routine basis. I think as we meet the challenges of these payroll compression issues, departments where there's pay disparities, I think sometimes deriving dollars gives us an opportunity to have a discussion about how we can equalize pay. Seeing all of the things that are happening in our community with our youth, I think it gives us an opportunity to create some funding to strengthen programming back to our parks and recreation departments. And I think it's just the right thing to do for the taxpayer, to show them that we're leading the way in spending their dollars in a fiscal responsible way. So I asked for this. I'm hoping that I will get some support in asking departments to model. We're not implementing anything, we're just modeling it, just to see how we can make an impact as we have these budget challenges moving forward. So with that said, I see Commissioner from the 5th that's in the queue. The floor is yours, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, you said you're just asking them to model, which means that I don't know if we vote or just take it as information or what have you, but I think we need to give them some things to hang on, whether or not you want them to cut travel. Do you want them to cut the amount of paper that they use? Do you want them to, like Dr. Malik and those folks, they ride all over Augusta, maybe they cut back on their gas consumption or what? I think we need to give them some things that we want them to take a look at that we can save on. I don't know if we got a certain type of lawnmower that uses less gas that we want people to buy. We gave a certain department a certain amount of money to buy a number of trucks or what have you, instead of buying 10 trucks this year, maybe they want to buy just 5 trucks this year. I'm not sure, but I think in order for them to model, they're going to need some type of help, because if you call me and ask me to cut 5%, I don't know where to cut it from. And that's what they're going to be doing, because everybody wants to go to a conference, everybody wants to ride around in the cars, everybody wants to eat lunch at a certain time and wants you to pay for it and what have you. So I think we need to, as you say, model, we need to give them something that they need to model themselves after. But, you know, right now, I'm not sure, you know, if this is the right time to do any kind of cuts or whatever. I'm not for or against right now, but I think we need to give them some things that they need to take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just so you know, the mayor's office is going to be leading the way with this. We've already been discussing on, you know, how we could reduce our budget by 10 and 5%. And as you know, we have probably one of the smallest budgets in government. Yet I've realized, coming up from outside of government, the responsibilities and the ask are huge. So we're going to be leading the way and make sure we model our 10 and 5% budget reductions. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Frantham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of have a little bit of a different approach. I commend you for bringing this forward. I believe that, you know, some people talk about, well, you can't cut head count, can't do this. Then if that's the case, I believe that we ought to task the administrator to tell everybody to submit a report within 30 days of cutting 3 to 5% on what they choose within their budget. They know their budget. And I think this government, because we don't do budget billing, based budgeting, whatever, my head's not all there. I think that we have the mentality, you use it or lose it, and at the end of the year, we spend all this money on parties and all these things, because if we don't have it, if we don't spend it all, then they're not going to give it all to us the following year. So I think that as well as department heads, they might need 5,000, but they're going to ask for 10 because they know they're not going to get 10 from us, but they might get what they need based on how this past government's worked. So I think that we ought to put it on the department heads through the administrator to bring us back a plan within 30 days. And I do think it ought to be elected officials as well. I know that's kind of hard to say, and they think that, you know, we can't touch them in a sense, but they're accountable to taxpayers as well. And I think that goes for this commission as well, that we ought to look at what we can cut as well, whether that's a travel or whatnot, just to show the good faith of leading the way, because we obviously going to have department heads that are going to tell us we can't cut anything, sorry. But if we kind of lead the path of cutting something on our end through the clerk's office, then I think that starts the trend, and I think that we ought to assign them to tell them what they can cut, not us just giving them what to do in a sense, because they know their budget the best. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 9th, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think before we even do an exercise like this, we need to remember that we got the right sizing. We have the compensation study coming, and we're in budget cycle. So would this be a true and accurate exercise? So with that, I just think we need to receive this as information and come back once we have all these studies, because if we start now, we might not need to, you know, it won't come back as accurate. So I think we need to receive this as information.
Well, thank you, Commissioner from the 9th, but keep in mind, as part of Administrator Dow's presentation in the right size, and budget cuts was a component of it. If I remember, I think that's part 9, 8 or 9. It was a part that I believe, you know, you mentioned having a discussion about the payroll plan and the discussion of the payroll study. If we don't take action now, at least getting ahead of the game, I think is going to be critically important too. And I think this make an easier discussion as to how we accomplish the payroll disparity that we have. So are you putting in the form of a motion that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And
Said it was second. All right. So, Madam Clerk, we
I
have
have a substitute.
All right. Order, please. All right. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put in the form of a substitute along the same lines as Commissioner Franham that we tasked the administrator with asking each department, including the elected officials departments, to come back prior to budget season, because frankly this is the best time to do this type of exercise is before the budget, with a 3 to 5% cut across each department.
Second.
All right, so Madam Clerk, we have a substitute motion that has a proper second. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Johnson. Well,
I came out of the queue, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything to say.
You got it. All right. All right, Chair recognizes, I caught you this time, Commissioner from the 2nd, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You asked Administrator Dowds when she did the budget cuts in her right-sizing plan, what she meant by that, but she didn't. I know that there was so much dialogue. Administrator Dowds, can you please let us know when you did the budget cuts in the right-sizing plan, what you were referring to in that?
Sure, Commissioner Pulliam. I listed, as the mayor stated, Section 9 of my right-sizing plan as a option for recouping the $10 million that was set forth from ARP as tasked by the commission. That section was titled Percentage-Based Budget Cuts. It starts off by stating that across-the-board cuts can have a positive and negative impact on both the budget and service delivery. While this measure can immediately reduce the amount of expenditures, this method can simultaneously reduce the overall value of our public services. It goes on to not state a percentage-based amount, which was my recommendation simply because of how our government is currently operating. At the same time, it drew note to the fact that there could be a percentage across all departments, which is an equity approach or a targeted approach, as well as a change in governing body priorities. And again, that was Section 9 of my right-sizing plan.
So with that, thank you, Administrator Dowds. With that, do we not owe it to ourselves to see which approach would be the best approach in our current government and the way we're structured? Because is saying that 5 to 10% in every single department, are all departments created equally in that they all have the same budget, the same needs, the same, is so many factors that go into that. So can we just say 5 to 10% everywhere when some departments may in fact be struggling to meet the demands of what they need to do? Now, does that not mean that we may not need to take a deep dive into how money is being spent in those departments? No, it doesn't mean that. I believe that would be a great thing to do, because everyone may not be spending the way they should be spending, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be cut. So I think there's so many different factors. That's my personal opinion based on what Administrator Dowds just said.
Thank you. And Madam Commissioner, with all due respect, this is just a model. It's not actually cutting anything. It's just for them to take a look at their budgets, and if they had to implement a 3 or 5% cut, how would it affect either headcount or services or their ability to service our constituents? It's not an actual cut. It's just asking for them to model it. And as you know, throughout the state of Georgia, you hear all the time with the governor. I mean, even when we were in these great years, oftentimes departments are tasked with, with having a strict adherence to their budgets based on how income is flowing into our state. We owe it to our constituents locally to do the same thing. When we have challenges where some departments are paying more than others, we owe it to ourselves. As you mentioned, this plan regarding payroll study, we know it's going to come back to where we're going to have to pay some employees more. I think it's prudent upon us to strategically get ahead of this. And this exercise, by modeling it, gives us a great opportunity to do that. Not saying that we're going to cut anybody's budget. Regretfully, some departments will lose. There's going to be others to gain. There will be others where some employees deserve to earn more money. I just think by modeling it, at least we show our voters and our constituents that we're doing the right thing. So, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th. You're in the queue, sir.
I guess y'all were talking, so I lost my train of thought. I'm out.
You're out. All right. So right now, I'm coming to you, Commissioner from the 1st, but there's a substitute motion for a 3 to 5% model to the administrator, and that includes all elected offices, which I think is a great idea. So I guess, Madam Clerk, if you will restate the motion.
You did it perfectly.
Okay. All right. All right.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, one more question.
Certainly.
So when you say model, because I just want to make sure I'm getting a very clear picture, you're essentially requesting that it almost be a training exercise of some sort. Is that what you're saying? You want to see what departments would do if they had, department heads would do if they had to cut a certain percentage from their budget.
And what would be the recommendations from their department, and how would it affect their ability to serve as our constituents, or if it would affect headcount? At least model it. Not saying that we're going to implement anything, but I think it's it's prudent upon us to at least have them to have the exercise done. Now I'm just asking for the exercise to be completed as we enter into budget session. All right, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote. We got a substitute motion, 3 to 5%, every department included in elected offices.
I got a question.
Commissioner from the 5th.
Okay, you said this is a model. Commissioner Garrett just gave us a motion as a directive. So, Commissioner Garrett, are you actually saying that we need to do these cuts, or is it a model?
No, this is a model because once the departments come back to us, then we'll make those decisions on whether to actually make cuts or not.
That's right.
This is just an exercise to see if all of a sudden the economy tanks and we have to make cuts across the board. What would this look like? I mean,
I got you.
It's a planning tool.
But okay, but I will say this, that I follow what Commissioner Scott is saying. We're in budget season, we got right sizing, we got a lot of stuff that's coming up, and some of it is going to call for some cuts on its own. Correct, Mrs. Administrator? Wake up, come on.
That's possible, Commissioner. Yes.
That's possible. And the $10 million is possible get back money that we can get back and what have you. So
it's a perfect time having this model.
Well, I'm like Ms. Scott. I think we need to wait until all this goes down with the new budget and the right sizing and the $10 million and
it's all part
what have you. We got a lot of stuff that's going on. Okay, thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk. Well, one more. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th. Commissioner Guilfoyle.
I was going to stay quiet on this one issue here. The administrator brought up that she was tasked to find the $10 million on this right size, and I heard it behind this dais, the right sizing plan that we have in place. But the challenge I find with the right sizing, I think it was misunderstood from my position, is that we base in half of that based off of revenue, whether it's liquor, hotel, or sales tax. As we can see right now, our dollar is not worth anything, and everything's costing us more. So we're going to see a slowdown. We was hoping to find a continuous $10 million repetitive from this year forward. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner from the 1st, you want to jump in before we go?
Yes, sir. I just want to add this last piece in. We're talking about being fiscally responsible and finding savings, but I want to remind the commission that today, as soon as we leave, we almost approved $1 million worth of new cars, $818,000.
I didn't.
So here's my point that I want to make here. If we want to be fiscally responsible in all of these types of things, it starts with the buttons that we push up here. All right, so let's not put it on our department heads. It's on us.
I agree.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Guilfoyle, you're up there. All right, let's vote, Madam Clerk. We voting. Just vote yes. Are you kidding me? Oh, my goodness. We got one more vote. I can't believe it. You know, that's a good thing.
That motion fails 3-5.
All right, so
With Mr. Franham voting yes, Mr. Garrett, and Mr. Guilfoyle.
all right, so we have
Voting no, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Pulliam, Mr. Williams, Mr. Lewis, and Ms. Scott.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We have an original motion that's on the floor, and can you restate that motion, please?
To
for us
receive
vote?
his information.
To receive his information. Okay. Let's vote.
Receive his information. That motion carries 6-2 with Mr. Garrett and Mr. Guilfoyle voting no.
I can't believe y'all.